Our next speaker is Ms. Tebogo Makgaka. And she's a risk management and consultant at Machankura.
Port 833, yeah. Okay. Port 833.
I put 833. My apologies.
Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you? So congratulations for this achievement. So I wanted to make my introduction and my speech more relaxed. I think some of you I met already at Adopting Bitcoin and taught you how to float that side and things like that. So yeah, I'll try and keep it more informal. So I started working in Bitcoin industry formally last year, July. It was the time where regulation had come through and then we needed to get a license. But my background, I did actuarial science at UP, and then I worked in the long-term insurance side. So I worked at Old Mutual for a couple of years, Liberty for a couple of years. Then I decided to go into consulting. So the first gig didn't really go well, but I think I learned a lot from it, and somewhere it launched my career into Bitcoin, because without it, I wouldn't have actually taken the pill, the orange pill, as they say. So I first heard about Bitcoin around 2020 COVID time. That time, it was my sister, but I was so skeptical. But my reason behind it was not anything to do with, with the asset itself. Because even with the fiat side, I didn't even trust the system. So I'm a South African who grew up outside of the country, and with that, I experienced the hyperinflation in Zimbabwe 2008. So that's why I had a mistrust with anything related with the markets, because there was a time where I think because my dad and mom had come here, so my dad is from Limpopo and my mom is from Zimbabwe. So they'd come here for a funeral, but then the crash was happening, and then we would be sent to the banks and things like that to try and withdraw the last money that was there, because the time you'll be standing in the queues, the value of the money that you're supposed to take would actually be depreciating even further. So maybe you're at the queue and you're supposed to get maybe even at least bread or whatever. And I'll say maybe it's 20 Rand at that point in time. By the time you get out of the queue, probably it will now be 100 Rand. So the money you've withdrawn is not useful. So that was my reason for not trusting Bitcoin. It had nothing to do with lack of financial education, since I was in the financial system. But let me get into it. I did prepare a few notes in terms of career advice and things like that. So the advice that I'll start off with is perseverance, opportunity, and skill set. So already, because you've done your diploma, you already have the technical and some of the non-technical knowledge, but now it's about using it in a practical sense for you. So I feel like Bitcoin industry, or knowing about Bitcoin, is more of a personal journey, just the same way financial journeys are very different, because you have different needs, you have different aspirations, all of you have maybe want to be different things in your career. And then I went on to ego, confidence, and difference. So sometimes what happens is the people who know about Bitcoin, especially the more you know about it, there's this confidence that ends up coming through, and sometimes it can end up being overconfidence. So maybe you have your friends who don't know about Bitcoin, and then because you now know about Bitcoin, instead of sharing to them from a humble perspective, you now probably be looking down on them to say, these ones, they don't know anything about Bitcoin and things like that. So you should be careful about that when you get into the industry as a career. And then the other point I put was genuine connections versus exploitation. So because we are obviously in Africa, what sometimes ends up happening is most of the, I could say, the power or people with power in the industry tend to be from the global north, that's like your America, Europe and stuff. So sometimes what will happen is maybe you meet people at a conference, or you meet people who want you to do work. You need to consider the contracts that you're being given. Firstly, you need to see, okay, if I'm doing this, like as I said, in 2021, I ended up doing a translation for Exonumia the founder is someone I went to university with. He did computer science, so he's the one who is behind Machankura. So he asked me to do translations and stuff. But even though he's like a friend, he still knew that it's supposed to be a paid opportunity, and he paid me for the work. So similarly, for you guys, when you now do projects, you need to know, okay, is this a voluntary program? If it's a voluntary program, fine. What am I benefiting from it? That means either you're benefiting the fact that on your CV, you'll be able to write that, okay, I volunteered, for example, at Bitcoin Ekasi, and then that's already work sort of history. So that's like an intangible profit, right? You can't hold it, but it's something you can use in the future. Then secondly, if it's actual work, you need to also learn how to value your work. So you have to research, because what happens sometimes is maybe, what can I give an example of? Maybe bread here is 20 Rand. I'll use bread as my example. And then in America, maybe it's 40 Rand. So if you're doing the same work here as someone else in America, you should ask to be compensated the same. But then if you're still starting, then maybe you can negotiate, because obviously you first want to build your brand. So that's something to consider. And then I'll go on to, what was it? Getting over the fascination and mapping out a plan. So what do I mean by that? As I explained earlier, I mentioned that because you guys know Bitcoin as a technology, you now know mining, you know nodes and everything, you might then get trapped in the fascination of knowing about that and not do anything with it, right? So if you're gonna take it as a career, working in the industry, whether, I think in South Africa, they call it the crypto asset service provider space, you now need to take it as a career. It's no longer a hobby. So which means if people ask you to show up on time, you show up on time. If it's an interview, even if it's people you've seen from the conference and you know them socially, you need to still take them seriously, because you never know, some of the chats that you have there could lead to a job. So you need to take those kind of opportunities seriously. Also, when people ask you to do small things, for example, volunteering at adopting Bitcoin, do it well, because people notice that you're someone who's dependable, and they can actually end up giving you a bigger project or a long-term contract. Because for my role, I think I was only supposed to do it for 4 to 6 months, but because I did it well, then they extended that contract. Right, and then we'll go on to the next thing. So I was looking at the tax aspect. So I think you are now aware that the industry is now being regulated, which means when you do the job or whatever in Bitcoin, yes, you can get away with with them like SARS. This is not knowing for a few years or whatever, but eventually they'll catch on, because there are times where you're going to withdraw your money into your account, so they'll see that there's a pattern. Okay, this person is getting paid every end of the month, and then, or they're withdrawing every end of the month, so they'll notice that that's your income. What I would advise is, if you've decided to take it as a career and you're actually earning Bitcoin as part of your pay or whatever, try and keep aside part of it. It can be 10%, 5%, just aside as Bitcoin or whatever, or fiat. And then when you need to do your tax returns, at least you have enough money to pay to SARS than for them to come to you and then ask maybe for like a lump sum, and you're not ready for that aspect. Because maybe imagine now having to, what do they call it, to backtrack, and then you have to pay for all those years that you worked in the industry. That would be a nightmare. Okay, and then balance. So 80-20 rule, I think people always talk about 80-20 rule. So with the 80-20 rule, when I was doing corporate, one of my managers used to tell me, like, you know what, there are certain funds that you like look at and make sure everything is fine there in terms of matching the assets and liabilities and whatever. That's your main job, because the things that you're looking at is billion rand worth. So if you do well in that thing, people will know and notice that, okay, this person is actually doing their work. So you need to figure out when you start working to say, okay, what is the most important thing? What is the thing that if I don't do well will affect the company, whether be it profitability or whether be it, like, for example, if you do queries and someone wants to be helped, even in the Bitcoin side, but you don't help them on time, what impact does that have on that customer? They're not going to trust you, your reputation, and all those things will be affected. So you need to learn what part of your job is very important. And then the 20%. Every job you do will have something you don't like. So for people who've worked before, whether they're a nurse, maybe it's the patients that give them trouble, but there's always going to be an element of that job that you don't like. So you just have to make sure that it's not the majority of the job, but do it gracefully. So for my side, when I started, I was like, oh, I've done actuarial science, and then we had to do queries where we help people with queries, and you're thinking, well, did I do all that at varsity for me to be, doing queries? But now in the Bitcoin world, it's actually something that helps me, because now when we are doing complaints management or customer service, I can still apply what I learned from that job in this role. All right. So I think I've spoken about most of the things. And then lastly, I'll talk about financial freedom and what it looks like for you. So when you go to work and now you're in your career, there are things that you want. Either you want to renovate your mom's house, or whether you want to buy your own stand, whether you want to buy a new car or something. You need to identify those things early, which means when you earn your income, part of it should be for you. Because I think you've heard of the term black tax, which is you could be earning a good salary, or even like whatever salary is good salary. But if you don't, put a habit of rewarding yourself for the work you've done, you can end up in a cycle where you work for many years, get a lot of income, but you have done nothing for you because you are the one who's working. So I would encourage that as soon as you start working, also have a certain percentage that you say doing something fun. Like, it doesn't have to be always the serious thing. Maybe taking yourself out for a movie and things like that. And then the serious things, obviously, if you want to buy something of substance, putting money aside. You already have the Bitcoin knowledge, so you can be using that to achieve that. And then, for the ladies, I have to give the talk. Don't be shy, I know your teacher's here, but then also you have to understand that you'll be going into an environment which is mainly male-dominated. So I would say be you. Don't shy away from doing the technical stuff. If you want to do computer science, do it. Nothing will stop you if you do work hard. And then another thing, as you then go to work, there are going to be conferences and stuff. Some people might not see your intelligence. They'll just see you as ladies. So you have to be aware of that and be able to detect that. So you need to show, even if it's clients or whatever, you need to show that you mean business. And then when it's time to work, it's time to work. So such that, because the industry seems like big, but then people know each other. So don't let people exploit you. Even if you're supposed to go for like a conference, make sure that your hotel is booked and all those things. Make sure also if you need to travel for work with a group, stick to the people you'll be traveling with, because for ladies, unfortunately, people will approach you, they want to date you, whatever. But make sure, if it's a career, yes, at some age after you're 21, whatever, you can be dating and everything. But if you're there for work, focus on the work. Don't allow people to exploit you in the industry, yeah? And I think that's that in terms from a serious side. And then I'll end off with a poem. I don't know whether it makes sense or not, but at least I wanted to make it a bit fun. So yeah, here it goes. So technical and non-technical terms you have learned. Challenging and stretching yourself into a new realm. Mining, history of money, lightning networks, and nodes with the order of the day. Custodian, self-custody wallets too. Fascinated by this new technology. Skill sets and financial education you have acquired. What then does the future hold? God only knows, as you each will bloom in your own unique way. Equipped with knowledge, may your journey be filled with light and love. Share what you have learned and shine ever bright. Knowing to feed yourself first, healthy boundaries and success be yours to have. May the friendships you have made in this course be a support network for you for life as you go forward. Help each other on your different paths. If knocked down for one reason or another, remember that is how the walking journey is. Rising and falling as you journey through. Keep on keeping on. Godspeed. Thank you.